Hey, I'm Mike Farrington. Welcome back to the boardroom. In this video, we're going to talk sharpening. I bought these chisels from a Japanese eBay seller, and when they arrived, they were so nice, I was inspired to do a sharpening video. So in this video, we'll go through the sharpening process, of course, but I'll also talk about gear, and I'll share a whole bunch of pro tips along the way. Kotonomi, I believe, means trowel chisel. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. These are very useful paring chisels. All right, let's take a closer look at what we're dealing with. It's tough to describe quality with words, but right as you pick one of these chisels up, it's obvious they are very, very high quality. However, these have lived a pretty hard life and they're not without fault. It looks like some damage from being dropped and some poor sharpening habits have left these chisels needing some love. No problem, I'm just the man for the job. Okay, laid out before you is my sharpening gear. I've got water stones, diamond stones, and a flattening plate. This is just a big diamond stone. Diamond stones are great because they are flat and they remain flat, which is great for flattening the backs of chisels, plane blades, and so on. The problem is they cut slow. Water stones are great because they cut fast and they go up to very high grits so they can polish and sharpen things to a very high degree. The problem is they need to be flattened. So a good sharpening kit will include a couple of diamond stones and a couple of water stones. Use the diamond stone to flatten the water stones as needed. Okay, this is a weird thing I like to do. I grind just a little off the handle to make sure that I'm able to flatten the whole chisel horseshoe thingy. All right, everybody's favorite segment, Death by Whiteboard Drawing. This is what we're going for, a dead flat back. That way, as you're polishing back the chisel, you know you're getting right out to the cutting edge. The chisel has a bit of a belly. It's very difficult to get this point sharp. Also, it doesn't make for a good reference surface. Finally, you could have a concaved situation. That's better because at least you know you're making contact out here as you're polishing, but even still, this is not a good reference surface. So become obsessive about flat. Flat is so important when sharpening. Speaking of flat, that is where we shall start. I take each chisel to the lapping plate just for a few seconds to assess how much work I'll have to do. Since these are of unknown origin and use, at this point I'm just hoping for not too much work. Upon first inspection, I find this chisel is concave, not the end of the world. This one will buff up without too much work. The others are convex, unfortunately, and will need quite a bit of attention. After some more work, this one is in the worst shape. This is from years of sharpening using poor technique, just polishing the edge and then getting back to work versus keeping the back flat. This one's not too bad, but the corner has some damage, probably from being dropped. This is going to take a little bit more work to flatten out. Finally, this smaller one's just about ready, just a little bit more of that concave to flatten out. So all in, flattening took about 3.5 hours, more than I hoped for, but I pressed on and persevered, all in a very shallow attempt to get you to click that like button. This succession of shots just shows how I eventually completed the tedious task. This last little bit was tough. I wanted to quit. But once I got it done, I was only left with the chip. No problem. I'll get that taken care of at the next step at the bench grinder. Next issue, the end of this chisel was not ground square. This doesn't need to be like NASA level accurate, but it should be closer than it is. Time for a bro tip. It's difficult to grind a specific angle when using a bench grinder. This protractor will help get closer. While not perfect, it is better than nothing. Right, for demo 1, I'm going old school. This is a 60 grit aluminum oxide wheel, so nothing special, and I'm going to freewheel this one. No jig, just my keen wits and a can-do spirit. I don't push too hard. I remove material slowly down to my line. I also check to make sure that I'm not overheating the steel as I go. Not too bad if I do say so myself. For demo 2, we're going new school. I use a high-class CBN, which stands for cubic boron nitride grinding wheel, and a Tormek jig. I set up the jig so the grinding is taking place right in the middle of the bevel. This will keep the bevel angle where it's at. While not needed, this jig makes this task nearly foolproof and significantly faster. And for this particular chisel, I grind until the chip on the corner has been vanquished. All right, at this point, all 4 chisels have been flattened on the back and have been ground to something between 25 and 30 degrees on the bevel. Also, the ends are square to the sides. This is a fun tip. Add cabinet door bumpers to your diamond stones. This gives them some cushion for the pushing and a nice grip as well. All right, here's my collection of diamond stones. Extra coarse, coarse, fine, extra fine, and a lapping plate. Lapping plate is just a larger size, really super duper coarse diamond stone. This is great for flattening water stones and initial flattening of tools. It's not needed, it is nice to have. My suggestion, if you were to buy 2, extra coarse, extra fine. This is 220 grit. It works great for flattening tools and water stones. Extra fine is 1200 grit, and it works great to begin the sharpening process. After the lapping plate, it's onto the coarse diamond stone. What I am brilliantly demonstrating here is alternating how you hold a tool will create a different scratch pattern. This can help determine when it's time to move on to the next grit. Also, if you're old as HE double hockey sticks like I am, a magnifying glass is awesome to have. Here you can see 2 scratch patterns. This means more work is to be done. And here the pattern is consistent, so it's time to move on. Glue bots are great for glue, but they're not exclusive. They will see other liquids as well. These really are great for adding a dab of water to your stone. I work my way up through extra fine on the diamond stones. Then it's time to shift gears and move over to the water stones. I find that stuff tends to clog up diamond stones. A brass brush will help clean them. Water stones need to be flattened. It's a bit messy, so I like to do this in my disgusting slop sink. I was embarrassed to show my disgusting and vomitous slop sink, but keeping water stones flat is so important that I decided to share anyway. It bears repeating. Keeping stones flat is absolutely key when polishing the backs of blades. Make yourself a board with some strips that'll hold the stones in place, and this will keep the mess off of your workbench. After the diamond stones, I normally go right to the 5K water stone. It's important to note that there isn't like some international committee to equalize all grits. What I mean is that stones from different manufacturers will vary and probably won't translate from one brand to the other. So your mileage may vary, but a jump from the 1200 grit diamond stone to a 5K water stone seems about right to me. After 5,000, I move up to the 8,000 grit stone. Please note the circular pattern I'm using here. This is me using my own pro tip from earlier in the video. Here you see a spot, it just won't buff out with the 8,000 grit stone. So I go back to the 5,000 stone, I reflatten it in my vomitous slop sink and try again. Once I'm happy, I move back up to the 8,000 grit stone. All right, skipping ahead, this is a 30,000 grit stone. Holy smokes. Not needed, and I don't even know if I can tell the difference between it and a 12,000 grit stone in terms of how my tools perform. My suggestion is do a good job with an 8,000 grit stone and see how your tools work. My guess is that it will be sharp enough for any fine carpentry or fine woodworking that you'll be doing. The 30,000 grit stone is the carpenter's version of the computer nerd building a super fast computer. With the backs flat, it's time to move on to the bevel. This is a sharpening jig of my own design. I call it the Sharpening Jig. I sell them on my website if you'd like one for your shop. So I start with the 5,000 grit stone and only take as many strokes as needed to get a shiny line across the edge. It's important to clean between grits. From there, I move up to the 8K stone and so on. I have a video somewhere on my channel showing this jig in excruciating detail if you'd like more info. Mother of God, not more death by whiteboard drawing. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the burr. What is the burr? It's a little bit of metal that is stretched or pulled away anytime a grinding force is applied. So when I grind a bevel, the burr is sort of pulled down in a way like this. When I flatten the back, it's kind of pushed up. The key to getting a sharp edge is to gently fold the burr back and forth several times to get it to break away as gently as possible. If it is broken away too aggressively, it will pull some metal away with it, leaving a blunt edge, which we don't want. If it's folded back and forth gently, it will gently break away, leaving the sharpest possible edge. This is why on the final stone that I use to finish sharpening, I'll hit the bevel, I'll hit the back, I'll hit the bevel, I'll hit the back. I do that a few times and that just folds that burr and breaks it away as softly as possible. All right, here's my vast collection of water stones. 30,000, nice to have, totally not needed. 12,000, okay, fine. This will really make stuff very, very sharp. 5,000 and 8,000, these are the workhorses. You go diamond stone, then 5,000, 8,000, and you have a very sharp tool. These right here are where you want to start. 1,000 I just use occasionally for touching up bevels if they have a little nick in them, not totally needed. Goonies never say die, as we all know. Since this kind of turned into a chisel restoration, the handles had that yucky, sticky, sweaty feel to them. No big deal. Respect to the guy who made them that way. I decided to scrape that off and give them a fresh coat of oil. Shifting gears here, big style. A hollow grind is what's created when grinding a tool with a bench grinder. The radius of the wheel is ground onto the bevel of the tool. This is important when sharpening by hand because it offers 2 points of contact. So for those of you who prefer to sharpen by hand, here's how I do it. For wider tools, I turn it 90 degrees like so. I tap the top part of the bevel, then lever it down until both parts are touching the stone. Keep my wrists locked, and I use my legs to move the chisel back and forth. This technique does not work for narrower tools. For these, I tap the top of the bevel onto the stone, then again lever it until both points are touching. Then just draw the tool backwards. Locked wrists, I use my legs. I suggest as you start this technique, only draw the tool backwards on the stone. Pushing it can cause it to dig in. However, after some practice, back and forward becomes quite natural. Okay, over time, the sharpened part of the bevel becomes too big, and at this point, it becomes too much work to actually polish out to the cutting edge. New problem. Back to the grinder. Don't grind away all of the sharpened section. Leave just a little. That will make sharpening easier. The only time I grind away the whole deal is if there's a chip. Sharpening is a basic, fundamental woodworking skill. Many people wait way too long to get serious about their sharpening. I suggest it should be one of the first skills learned on someone's woodworking journey. I realize it's expensive, that's okay. Start with one stone and build from there. That's what I did. In the video description below, I'll have a bunch more information about the topics I talked about in this video. Sharpening is a huge topic. I could have made this video hours long easily, but for your sake, I edited it down to what was in this video. My hope is that you picked up a tip or two along the way. Hopefully it was mildly entertaining. If not mildly entertaining, I hope it was not vomitous. If you would like to pick up a sharpening jig for your shop, check out my website. They'll be for sale there. Questions, comments, fears, or concerns, post them below. Thanks for watching. Till next time.